Welcome to the podcast series of the International FOP Association. We serve families living with the ultra-rare genetic disease fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, as well as researchers and healthcare providers studying and treating this disease. One of the rarest, most disabling genetic conditions known to medicine, FOP causes bone to form in muscles, tendons, ligaments, and other connective tissues. Bridges of extra bone develop across joints, progressively restricting movement and forming a second skeleton that imprisons the body in bone. The IFOPA is a U.S.-based nonprofit organization whose mission is to fund research to find a cure for FOP, while supporting, connecting, and advocating for individuals with FOP and their families, and raising awareness worldwide. You can find us online at ifopa.org. Welcome to today's podcast.
Welcome to the first of our 2021 Advocacy Series podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome.
The Advocacy Series is a new family services program at the IFOPA that focuses on supporting members of the community as they develop skills and identify resources that are crucial to the individuals' and families' success speaking up and getting their needs met. This first podcast is just going to be Karen and I doing an introduction to advocacy, but for our future podcasts, we look forward to bringing in community members to share more of their experiences on specific aspects of advocacy. So we'll start by introducing ourselves and telling you a little bit about our backgrounds. My name is Hope Newport. I'm the Family Services Manager here at the IFOPA, and my background is in human development and family studies. So within that very broad scope, I focused in child life, which means that I worked to support children and families with serious illnesses. So this included making sure that children understood what was happening in a way that they can process and make sense of their experiences, and also making sure that parents had the tools to support their child through the complications caused by their condition. So I'm sure every mom knows that, especially for little ones, so much of how your child responds to a situation is based on how you as a parent respond. So my work there really focused on supporting the family as a whole.
Hi, so I'm Karen Kirchhoff, and I'm the Family Services Coordinator here at the IFOPA, and my background is in physical therapy, and the last 18 years before coming to the IFOPA, I specialized in pediatric physical therapy for infants and toddlers aged birth to 3 years of age. I supported families in their homes and helped them learn how to work with their child in a fun, age-appropriate way to help improve their development despite whatever developmental delay or disability they had. But I also helped teach parents how to advocate for what their child's needs were, whether that was at their home or daycare, at the doctor's office, or out in the community. While neither Hope nor I are experts in advocacy, we both have had enough experience with it to know just how truly important it is. So to help learn about the best information to discuss in this series for you all, we did a lot of research to learn more about this information, whether it was internet searching or YouTube videos, and even reaching out to experts on different advocacy topics. And what we found was there was endless resources out there to support individuals and caregivers in their journey as becoming an advocate. But as one expert shared with us that we spoke to, she said, as long as you're digging in and looking for more information, you can't go wrong.
Yes, we have learned so much in preparing for this series.
Too much.
And it has really reinforced that this topic of advocacy is so important for Karen and I and for the community as a whole. And the more we've learned about it, the more we realize it's not just specific to FOP. It's really a day-to-day need for every person, but especially for our community, it's an important topic for us to dive into. So, I already see individuals of our community speaking up and being advocates for themselves. It's something that you are all already doing. And every time I do a welcome phone call with a newly diagnosed patient, I ask if they would like to connect with another member of the community. And anytime a parent says, yes, please put me in touch with another mother or father, they're speaking up. They're, asking for more information to help support their child. They're starting to create a support network that they'll rely on as they continue in their journey with FOP.
And that's advocacy. That's an example of advocacy. And I have lots of examples, maybe with not the new families like Hope experiences, but with the not so new FOP community members, they reach out to me almost daily for support with a particular situation or area of their life that isn't as functional as maybe they would like it to be. And that process of beginning to think about a situation and problem solving on how it could be better, and then reaching out to others, whether it's their OT they work with or reaching out to the IFOPA to discuss ideas and brainstorm a solution, whether you realize it or not, that's also actually advocating for yourself too.
Yeah, so you guys are already doing, you're already taking the first steps in this advocacy adventure, but we want to continue to build on those skills. So the title of this first podcast is Advocacy, You Can Make a Difference. And this is going to be a very basic, broad overview of learning how you can become your own best advocate or the best advocate for your child or loved one. We'll be exploring 10 specific skills for laying this foundation to advocate for your needs in any situation. So later in the year, we'll be focusing on applying these skills to more FOP-specific scenarios, such as advocating for yourself at your doctor's office or advocating for what you need at a wheelchair evaluation. But before we dive into these 10 skills, we wanted to sort of take a step back and just talk a little bit about what advocacy means. So there are different types of advocacy. And the first one that you really want to focus on sort of mastering before you move on to the other types is self-advocacy. And this is really just the action of representing your views or interests. And that includes, being able to identify your issue first, being able to communicate those needs or desires to others. And in doing that, kind of understanding your strengths, identifying goals, knowing your legal rights. Those are all things we're going to talk about a little bit later today. But every time you speak up for yourself, you're advocating for your needs, whether it's something as trivial as pointing out that your order is wrong at a restaurant, or as something as significant as educating your doctor about FOP.
Yeah, I have a fun example about the restaurant later on that we'll talk about to just give you a layman's term example. But the next type of advocacy is individual or peer advocacy. And this is very similar to self-advocacy, except the difference is that it means that a person or a group of people are focusing their efforts on advocating for someone else. And there's two common types of individual or peer advocacy. There's informal and formal. And I'll give you an example of each to help you understand them a little bit better. So let's say someone at your church has decided they want to help advocate for you with a particular problem, like let's say helping you find funding for a wheelchair ramp. So that friend or church member is volunteering to help you, and that's a type of informal peer advocacy. But when Hope and I are focusing our efforts on helping someone that maybe calls the IFOPA or the Family Services Department for support, that's an example of a more formal peer advocacy, because Hope and I are part of an organization that actually has staff in place specifically designed to help advocate for you and your family. So it's a more formal situation versus an informal situation where maybe somebody just volunteers to help you.
Uh-huh. So those first two are really key. And I know we have some individuals with FOP who are participating in our advocacy series, but we also have some caregivers, parents who are participating. So, you guys are already filling those first self-advocacy and that individual peer advocacy roles. And the third type of advocacy that we're going to talk about is systems advocacy. So that is really simply just changing policies, laws, or rules that impact how someone can live their life. So one example that we wanted to share to kind of bring a little bit more light to this kind of complex term is the FDA listening sessions on FOP, which took place last year. So there was an opportunity for members of the community to go and share their experience with a group of people from the FDA who would then be able to impact or, share that knowledge in the regulatory process that impacts if a drug for FOP is approved. So this systems advocacy is one that we're not focusing on a lot in the advocacy series this year. As I said, the self-advocacy and as Karen explained, the individual peer advocacy, those are really the building blocks, and that's where we want to start. So let's talk a little bit now, move into those 10 steps that I mentioned before. These are 10 steps to becoming an effective self-advocate. And we found these 10 steps to becoming an effective self-advocate from the book WRAP, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, written by Mary Ellen Copeland in 2010. It was published by Peach Press Drummerston. So we created a worksheet that kind of summarizes these 10 tips and also has some questions that you can work through as we're going through this. And if you want to take a minute to pause the podcast, this worksheet is available on the same website where you accessed this podcast. So if you want to click on the website, download the worksheet, print it off, or pull it up on your computer so you can kind of fill it in as we're going through, please feel free to do that now. We are going to go ahead and dive in with our first skill, which is believing in yourself. So This may seem really basic, but knowing that and believing that you are a unique and valuable person is the first step to advocating for yourself. If you don't think that your needs are worth fighting for, it's going to be very difficult to convince others to kind of join your cause. So it's remembering that you're worth the effort that it will take to advocate for yourself and to protect your rights. And for some people, you may need to start the development of this skill by, focusing on your self-esteem, to really believe in yourself and become your own best advocate. So if you're advocating for your child, this includes, communicating with them that they're worth fighting for. And the first question that you're going to find on that worksheet asks, what are your existing strengths and what are some of the areas where you could maybe focus and develop more skill in? So this is a really critical part of believing in yourself.
And I love that this is on the worksheet, because writing things down sometimes is way more revealing than just thinking about it inside your head. And self-esteem isn't a black or white concept. Maybe you have great self-esteem in some aspects of your life, but are less confident or shy in others. Like maybe you shine when sharing your story with friends or coworkers or even in front of groups of people, but maybe you clam up when you're at the doctor's office and have a hard time speaking up for yourself. Like I, for example, this is my funny example about the restaurant that Hope mentioned earlier. I don't have any difficulty striking up conversations with others, but I completely shut down when I have to ask for better service, like at a restaurant. I don't know why, but if my food is undercooked, or one time I even got the entirely wrong meal delivered to me, I had the hardest time speaking up, and I wouldn't do it. I would rather eat a meal that I didn't order than speak up and ask for what I need. So know yourself on an intimate level, so you can clearly understand the positive aspects of your self-esteem, but also where maybe your self-esteem could use a little boost. So definitely take advantage of the worksheet, write those things down, and you might discover something about yourself. But once you have maybe figured out some of the areas that you need to work on, the next thing you need to do is decide what you want. So number 2, as far as the tips for effective advocacy, is decide what you want. Clarify to yourself exactly what you need. This will really help you set goals and help you be clear to others about what it is that you want. Write them down. That's my biggest advice for this tip, is to write down your goals. There's power in writing down your goals. I recently read an article in Inc. magazine that a psychology professor by the name of Dr. Gail Matthews, led a study on goal setting and found you're actually 42% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. So decide what you want, make a list, and maybe keep it somewhere visible so you'll see it every day and it'll motivate you.
Oh, but sometimes those lists can be so overwhelming. Sometimes when I make a to-do list, I just have anxiety looking at it.
That's true.
I would encourage you, write those things down, but focus on one problem at a time. And maybe you want to start with a simple problem that you can, address and kind of correct a little more easily to build up confidence. Or maybe you want to start by choosing a problem that is going to be really impactful. It may take more time and work for you to successfully kind of complete or see change in, but once you do have that change, it's going to be really empowering.
And this is the second activity on our worksheet that we've done for you. Rather than making a complete list, like Hope said, we've asked you on the worksheet to just put down one area of your life that you'd like to create change. So maybe if you want to make an entire list, go for it. But for the purpose of this worksheet, just think of one that maybe you can focus on moving forward that you want to create some change.
Yeah, and once you have that area narrowed down, start to gather your support. So that's the third skill we're going to talk about, is developing a support system. So in advocating for what you need and want for yourself, it's really helpful to have the support of maybe it's a family member, friends, or people who have similar issues. And I found an article which highlighted some really helpful roles, so to speak, of a support system. So maybe you want to include the parent, which isn't necessarily your parent, but it's someone who you know will kind of check in on you periodically, make sure that you're doing okay, progressing with your goals. Maybe there's a realist. So this is someone who, when you have these big dreams, big goals, you're going to go to them and they're going to help provide maybe some of the constructive feedback to keep you on path. there's the listener, that person who maybe you go to just spew it all out when you don't want any constructive feedback. You just want to be able to share your thoughts.
To vent.
Yes. The cheerleader, that person who you can go to share all those thoughts, but who you know will always help you see the silver lining of a situation or be there to continue to encourage you. And another one is the researcher. So that friend of yours who loves to learn new things, is constantly coming to you with new information. Add that person to your support group and harness them. Put their quest for knowledge to a good use for your cause. So on the worksheet, looking back at that, you'll see that our third question is for you to outline who is your advocacy support team and kind of identify maybe some of the members of your team who fill some of those roles.
And if you're joining us as a parent and you're wanting to include your child in this advocacy journey, I could even see a fun activity coming out of this third worksheet question, where maybe take pictures of everybody that's on your support team and glue them to a poster board and have your child decorate it and start building success that your child can recognize. This is who I could go to for support, and this is who I have that is my cheerleader or my mentor or my researcher. And a lot of these activities can be made fun, not only for kids, but as a parent, helping grow your child's self-esteem. So the next activity is, this gets a little bit deeper. The first ones are kind of fun. Believe in yourself, decide what you want, gather your support, start getting your team in place. But then you're going to have to start doing some more nitty-gritty work. And I think this is where a lot of us start to fail in our pursuit of advocacy for ourselves, because we don't know what to do. So the next step is to just know your rights. And you need to know what you're entitled to by law in your country or your state or province or region, or even on a local level, depending on what your goal is and what you're working to achieve. So, for example, in the United States, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, which is pretty famous. Most people know what that is, but it's basically a set of laws that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs and school, transportation, and all public and private places that are open to the general public. And I do know there are similar laws like this internationally that have been developed around the world. I read an article that actually found in the last 20 years, 181 countries have passed disability civil rights laws that were inspired by the ADA. So you are going to have to do a little work. You're going to have to dig to find what those laws are, especially the laws that are specific to maybe what your goal is that you're working on achieving.
Yeah, within that, there are laws that protect people with disabilities from discrimination in employment, and the right to ask for and really receive reasonable accommodations that will allow you to have an equal chance to succeed. So, if we were to just look at maybe like a very real life example to this know your rights, with the global COVID-19 pandemic, many individuals with FOP who were in a workplace are working from home. And I think as we start to look at the transition maybe back to going to the workplace, there may be a delay for people with FOP to go back just for safety reasons. And so in this example, it would really be knowing, the laws that can protect you and give you some lenience to ask for those reasonable accommodations to stay at home longer.
Yeah, one good thing of COVID is I think it has brought more awareness to those accommodations that need to be made, because not just people with disabilities have needed those accommodations during COVID, but once this pandemic is over, I think it's good for you to know what the laws are, so that if you can't go back to work when everyone else is going back to work, that's a perfect example of doing your research, knowing what your rights are, so that you can stand up for yourself from a more educated platform.
Yeah. So that brings us to our next step, which is skill number 5, getting the facts. So when you educate for yourself, you need to know what you're talking about or what it is you're asking for. And, the internet is an excellent source of information. You'll want to make sure to do some accuracy checks if that's where you're going. But there's also just people who you can reach out to. Check with people who have expertise in what it is you're asking for. Ask people who have issues that are similar to yours. This is your opportunity to start kind of identifying solutions to the problem that you've identified. So for that workplace example, you may prepare by reading into what it is you need to enforce your rights. Maybe it is a note from your doctor. Maybe it is something like, the International Clinical Council on FOP issues some statements to help provide some guidance on things like the return to work during the COVID-19 pandemic. Or maybe you just, want to talk to other coworkers or friends. Maybe you're reaching out to someone in the FOP community who is navigating this similar situation to get their feedback and insight on the solutions or the accommodations that they're asking for. So you'll see on our worksheet, moving back to that, problem number 4, or the 4th question that we have issued there is, referring back to question 2, the answer, the one area you wanted to create a change. What were the laws or the facts that you need to learn about to get closer to reaching your goal?
Yeah, this is, again, where a lot of people trip up. They maybe, are a dreamer and they think about their goal and how great it will be when they achieve this goal, but you really need to do this step on the worksheet of get your facts, get them all lined up, write them down so that you can educate yourself better to move forward, because moving forward is the next step of planning a strategy, and you really can't do this unless you've done the work and you know your rights and you've gotten your facts. So planning a strategy basically is just using all that information you've gathered to plan a strategy that you feel will best help you get what you want and need for yourself. So our suggestion is to really think of several different ways to address the problem that you're wanting to attack and address it from different angles. So maybe ask your supporters for suggestions, or get feedback on your ideas and get other people's ideas of maybe how you could take action on a particular situation. And then ultimately what you need to do is choose one way to take action, and you're going to choose that one way that you feel will be the most chance of having success. So you may have a lot of different options that you've listed when you're planning your strategy, but definitely narrow it down and find the one that you think will be the most successful and start with that one.
Yeah, a lot of times when you kind of cast your net too wide, or you're working on too many different things at once, it's hard to do a good job at any one of those things. So by focusing, narrowing it down to that one action step, it lets you target your efforts, which is our next skill. So the 7th one we're on now is really being able to target your efforts by focusing on who is the person, the organization that you need to be working with to get change on this issue that you've identified. So you're going to want to talk directly with the person who can best assist you. And this is really about being intentional with your efforts to partner with that person who's most likely to help you succeed on your goal. So for that workplace example, maybe it's your direct supervisor who, is in charge of setting your work hours. Maybe it's an HR director. This isn't necessarily saying that you need to go to the CEO of the company.
Yeah, start easy. Pick your battles and start easy first before you try to move up the chain of command.
Yeah. And realize that when you're targeting your efforts, it may be a little bit harder to get in touch with that person. You may have to make more phone calls to discover who the right person is to help you create this change, but it's really worth the effort. Keep trying until you find that right person.
And once you find that right person and you are ready to target your efforts, these last 3 steps that we're going to talk about kind of all tie in together. But first is to express yourself clearly. So when you're asking for what you need and want for yourself, it's really important to be brief and to stick to the point. Don't allow yourself to be diverted or to ramble on with unimportant details, which, to be honest, a listener is probably going to start to tune you out if you do that. So it's really best to instead simply state your concern and how you want things to be changed. If you're met with resistance, just reiterate again what it is you want and what you need until you're successful with that target person that you've been speaking with, or until you're able to convince them to help you or help refer you to someone else who can assist you. And I know from personal experience that this can sometimes be a difficult thing to do. So you may want to role play different scenarios with a supporter or a counselor, or get a friend, recruit them to listen to what you are targeting your efforts to and what your strategy is and what you're going to say so that you can express yourself clearly, and practice. It's important to practice. Another great strategy for doing this and expressing yourself yourself clearly is to have an elevator speech that briefly explains your story in a way that will impact others the most. And when we were doing research for this podcast, I'll be honest, I had no idea what his elevator story was. It was Hope that knew about this, and she had to kind of explain it to me and what the purpose is. So do you want to explain to everyone? Because you do a better job at it than I do, definitely.
Sure. So the elevator speech, that name really comes from this idea that you are riding in an elevator and, you get in with someone, and from the time they get in to the time they get off, you have about maybe 30 seconds to share your story or to educate them about a point. And so, it's really about practicing, honing down so that in that 30-second elevator ride, you have the points, the information, the really the flow of your story thought out so that you can not only capture that person's attention, but motivate them to either join your cause or to learn more about what it is you're speaking to them about.
And that's hard to do. I mean, it's easy to ramble on for 5 or 10 minutes at a time about what your passions are, but to be able to hone it down into just a 30-second speech, that's a lot harder to do, but you are going to have more impact if you're able to do that. So we did create a space on the worksheet, not to write an entire elevator speech, but just to start thinking about what would some of the thoughts be that you want to share to capture someone else's attention about your story, or maybe how are you going to communicate your needs and inspire them, like Hope said, to maybe partner with you with your cause. And then this is a space for you to write down those thoughts, but we definitely encourage you after this podcast today to go and sit down and develop an elevator speech so that you can rehearse it and practice it, so that when you do have the opportunity to share your story and start advocating for yourself, you'll be less likely to stray off course when interacting with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And, along with being able to express yourself clearly, the intention of having this elevator speech that you come up with, it's also important to assert yourself clearly and respectfully. So our 9th skill is just that. It's this ability to speak up, but to do so in a respectful manner. So this will require listening to the other person in your conversation. So being an active listener and really hearing the other person's point of view and using that to formulate a really thoughtful response. It's remembering that being assertive and expressing your needs in a way that fosters respect is important, but you also don't want others to put you down or to walk all over you. If you're too passive or if you try too hard to avoid conflict, you risk your needs not being met and not being taken seriously. So this, one short sweet sentence to live by for this skill is to remember that being assertive is not being aggressive.
And I love that. I'm going to start making that my new mantra. Back to my silly restaurant example, I can't tell you how many pieces of undercooked meat I have forced myself to eat because I was too afraid to speak up, because in my mind, for some reason, I felt like if I was asserting myself, it was aggressive or going to come across as aggressive. And it's definitely a part of my personality or my self-esteem, I guess you could say, that I need to work on and remind myself. I love that. Being assertive is not being aggressive. And if you struggle with something like that too, write that quote down. I mean, this is going to motivate me, and I'm going to use this as a mantra moving forward, that it's okay to speak up for yourself and you can find a way to learn how to be assertive without it feeling aggressive. I love that. And then the last and final step in honing your skills as an advocate is to be firm and persistent. So don't give up. That's the biggest message in all of this, is that keep after what you want. You're worth it. And don't be afraid to fail. We all fail. I fail every day. And the more comfortable you get with failing and are able to pick yourself up and brush yourself off and keep going, it's going to benefit you in the long run. And that's how you develop these skills to be a better advocate for yourself. You may get a no from the first person you talk to, maybe even the second or the third or the fifth or the 15th or the 100th, but keep seeking out individuals that might be able to help you until you do get that yes. Use the no as maybe your next opportunity to try again, and keep trying until you do get that yes. That is the essence of being an advocate for yourself, is not giving up. And we did create a little activity, the last one on the worksheet, where we encourage you to maybe think of an experience where maybe you were a strong advocate and maybe where you did speak up for yourself, so that you can remember, hey, I am capable of doing this. Or you're welcome to use this worksheet space as to thinking of a time or an experience where maybe you wish you would have reacted acted a little bit differently or spoken up for yourself. So revisit this worksheet. We created this for you all to practice, and maybe print off multiple versions of it and fill it out multiple times for different things that you want to work on. But most important, like I said, is just to be firm and be persistent in what you want.
Yeah. So I know Karen and I have been talking at all of you for a while now. We're going to stop. We hope that you'll take a look back at this worksheet, continue to reference it. It is very kind of short, concise definitions of what we've been going through in this 10 tips for effective advocacy. Next month we'll hear from several members of the community who are going to share their perspective on how they prepared for FOP specific advocacy opportunities. So we would love to have you all join us for those community discussions that'll be taking place on Zoom in February. And then in March, we'll hear from one of the experts we found that started where we are now and has become a great advocate for her child. So she will be leading a webinar in March. So stay tuned for the sign up for those. There'll be emails and social media posts coming that'll give you the opportunity to register, sign up for those.
So thanks for joining us today for this advocacy podcast series. We hope that this has been informative and helpful, and that you'll join us back here next time.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.